Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Gavin Glakas. I'm going to be hosting the show today because Eric is out of town. I'm really excited to be here, so thank you for joining us. My guest today is the great Raymond Bonilla. Raymond, welcome.
What's up, Gavin? How are you, man? Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. I've admired your work for so many years, and I'm so glad that we can watch you paint and learn a few things from you. What are you going to teach us today?
So today we're going to be talking about kind of tackling or mastering color through value. So I'm going to take you through a simple still life and show you how I combine gouache and actually oil paint
Oh, wow.
to kind of break down the complexities of color into manageable bits.
Well, that sounds really cool. I'm really looking forward to that. So let's get the show started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Hi, everybody. As you may be able to tell, I am, in fact, not Eric Rhodes. Eric is away. I'm Gavin Glakas. I'm going to be hosting the show today. I'm really excited that Raymond Bonilla is on the show with us. And he's going to show us how to master color through value. So, Ray, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gavin. Today we have a simple still life set up right here. You should probably be able to see the reference. It's something that I think that I've done throughout school when I was learning how to paint. Nowadays I'm known for my use of color, but in school I was actually told that color is probably my biggest weakness, and it turned out that it wasn't that color was my weakness. I just never knew how to tackle it, and how I tackled it. I learned how to tackle it was through the use of value. So I have a simple still life of a red apple and a pear that I found in my kitchen. So I photographed it really quickly with my lights. And this represented exactly what I would do in school to help myself learn color. Now, in this case, what I'm going to be doing is establishing a underpainting, or just kind of organizing my values, really. And I'm going to be doing that in gouache. And the reason why that I've done that is because gouache is really forgiving. It's very malleable. And it is something that allows me to kind of go back and forth and not worry about any drying times, because, and I'll talk about it when I go into it, that's one of its big superpowers, is it never really dries.
So for people who haven't used gouache before and who might be hesitant, can you tell us about the learning curve? You know, if they want to try gouache out, how tough is it to learn to use gouache?
You know, I always say that the best thing about gouache is that it never dries and it can be activated. And the worst thing about gouache is that it never really dries, or it could be reactivated.
Right.
Gouache is considered what's called an opaque watercolor. So it's water soluble. You mix it with water, but it's got an opacitor in it that allows you to actually, instead of with watercolor, you're kind of layering sort of transparent glazes. Gouache is actually more opaque, so you can actually cover things on top of it. I'm going to be using the kind of the cons, or the weakness of gouache, and the fact that, like, once it dries really nice and matte, but it can be reactivated at any time. So you could take a 100-year-old gouache painting. If you put a little bit of water on it, it will reactivate it, and you can still move the gouache around. So that's bad if you're a traditional gouache painter. It's great if you're doing this process I'm going to be showing you now.
Right. All right. Well, we've got people checking in from all over the place, from Asheville, North Carolina, and Kansas City, Round Rock, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina. So hi to everybody who's joining us. We're so glad that you're here.
Awesome. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm essentially, what I have is I've covered my a very simple line drawing out, where I've mapped out my lights and my shadows. That's all I did, was I just grouped my values together. So there's a light side and a shadow side, basically as a part of a form that's turning towards the light and a part of the form that's turning away from the light. You notice I didn't put any sort of value like I would if you were kind of like throwing in a pencil value or scrubbing in value with like oil paint. The gouache is going to do that. So what I've done is covered everything in a burnt umber gouache, and there's a reason why I picked burnt umber that I'll talk about in a second.
So now, did you sketch that in charcoal and pencil? Did you fix it? How did you do that?
Yeah, so I essentially did it in like basically like a really sharp charcoal, and then I fixed it with some workable spray fixative. I mean, you could use anything you want. I mean, I often use colored pencils, graphite. Sometimes I go in with a brush. I think what matters is that you're organizing all of your shapes. So your final composition is pretty much laid down. You know exactly how large the shapes are, and the relationships are settled. And if you have that, then you have a successful underdrawing.
Great.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use, I have this paper towel right here, and you could see it's just a paper towel with water. And if I rub into it, you'll notice that it'll actually remove the gouache. And underneath it, you'll see is my ground, or just a thing that I started with. In this case, it's just a white gessoed surface. So I just use regular acrylic gesso. So I do that first, and then you do the drawing second. Another thing I wanted to talk about really quick is it's just kind of like the value that I used. You wanted a dark value, probably a little bit darker than middle value, just so that you can create a nice separation between your lights and your shadows. And you'll see that when I go into it, how I'm picking. The gouache, I use, some of you might be really familiar with this technique because it allows, it's really similar to kind of what you have with oil paint, Gavin, I'm sure you've done that, where it's kind of like a transparent wash, or you just sort of thin down oil paint and cover the surface, and then use a rag to kind of lift out your lights and your shadows.
Yeah, it's a very helpful approach.
Totally. I use gouache instead just because it helps me. I've done that before with oils, for sure. It's great. I don't really like, two reasons why I don't necessarily do it. One, I don't really like using thinners in my studio. I know you could do it fairly opaquely if you wanted to. But the second big thing, the reason why I don't do it is because I don't have to contend with the drying time. It will eventually dry if you do it in oils, which is great. But with gouache, it'll dry, but I could reactivate it at any time. So if I make an error or I miss a spot, I don't have to worry about it. I could just kind of go in and reactivate it and be stress-free. That's
that looks really helpful.
So I'm just going to cover this whole area here, or just remove this area. I like to start with my largest shapes first, and the reason why is because the larger the shape, the more impact it has on the overall kind of how we see the overall impact, the overall design of a picture. And then I'll move down into my smaller and smaller shapes here.
Yeah, I encourage everyone who's not familiar with Ray's work to go out and check it out. His color and his design are really incredible.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm a huge fan of your work too. So,
thank you.
Gavin and I have known each other for a couple of years, but this is the first time we're actually meeting.
Right.
Live, right?
Right. The wonders of the internet and social media, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, let me know if there's any questions. I don't mind talking and painting.
Yeah, so when you paint over the gouache that you haven't removed, it's not going to mix in with your oil paint, is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the great thing about combining it with oil paint is that it won't mix, right? So you have oil and water don't mix, so I can go over it with oil paint and won't disturb anything at all. And that's actually what I'm about to do right now. So what I've done now is I've essentially separated my lights from my shadows. And look, with just a little bit of water and a paper towel, you have a map of full values. I didn't really have to do much, which is really nice.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to work like this from now on, Ray. So thank you for adding this to my repertoire.
Well, I was excited when I first saw it because it's actually an old illustration technique that was derived from the oil painting technique. And my good friend David Grove was the first who was an illustrator. Passed away a couple of years ago, but he was somebody who was known for using this technique quite effectively.
And now, is your plan to paint over this just with straight paint? You said you don't like to use thinners. And do I take it you're not going to use any medium either, just straight paint you're going to paint on top of this?
That's a great question. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the oil painting process. Now the first thing I will do is I actually do use medium. I have right here, I don't know if you could see it in the corner here. Let me just bring that in the camera here. This is a little metal cap filled with some dryer, some Winsor Newton liquid. And for those of you who don't know what liquid is, it's just like just a standard kind of dryer, alkyd-based dryer. It helps just speed the drying time. You can thin down your oil paints. I like using the fine detail version of it. It's just a little bit thinner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more of a preference thing.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to establish sort of a base layer. Effectively, it's called like a couch of medium, just really thin medium of Winsor liquid all over. Now, the reason why I do that before painting is twofold. One, you'll see me. I'm going to from here on out. I'm just going to apply the paint opaquely. I'm not going to really thin it down at all. So the medium, since it's pre-applied, the equal amount of medium is going to be dispersed evenly across any sort of paint that I put down. So which is really nice because you can get really, if you abuse the medium too much, you dip too much into it, you can really saturate your surface really quickly, and then you won't be able to kind of put corrective strokes on top and build up your surface. The second reason why is because, like I said, gouache dries matte, right? So you'll see if I go in this sort of dark area right here, I don't know if that's going to come out, but it will, you can notice that the values are much deeper.
Right. Amazing that it doesn't. I mean, I'm still knocked out when I pour oil and vinegar into one container and they separate. I mean, it's amazing that we've been watching you take off all of that gouache this whole time, and this isn't affecting it at all.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? I love that.
We've got a question here from Barbara. She says she messed up a painting trying to add a foggy atmosphere after the background had been painted and dried. It didn't turn out well. What would be your method? Do you have to know in advance? Do you have an answer to that, or is that a lot of question for someone who's in the middle of painting? Should we answer that towards the end?
No, that's a great question. I mean, you have, a lot of times paintings go awry, and
I've heard that happens to people.
Yeah, I know, right? Never to
right.
us, but yeah, I read it somewhere in a book.
Yeah.
And the thing is, whenever that happens, it happens to me all the time. I just step back and kind of look at kind of what went wrong. If it was a background that I painted and it really just messed up my painting, and then it's more of like a vision thing. And what I mean by that is, it's usually because I don't have a clear path as to like what I want to do to the piece. And so what I'll do in that case is that I'll usually step back and not paint on the actual painting. If I have to solve something compositionally, I will take a photo of the painting itself, and then paint on top of that photo. So I'll print it out and I'll paint it in acrylics, or sometimes I'll go and take it into Photoshop and paint it digitally, and I'll correct it work on it until it's correct. And then from there I have a clear plan so that I can return to my painting with confidence that I know it's going to work out because I just figured it out beforehand.
Yeah, I do. But that's just a consistent part of my process. I'm just sort of the whole time I'm painting, going back and forth and adding things and trying things. But I think the question was more of what type of medium would you use if you were going to paint, say, a misty, foggy color transparently on top of a background that was already there.
Oh, I see. So if it was it depends on kind of the medium. I mean, you could use anything really. I mean, if it was an oil painting, you wouldn't be able to use acrylics. You'd have to use oils. So I would do that. If it was an acrylic painting, you could use acrylics. If you wanted to stay open for a little bit longer, you could go switch to oils. It'll dry a lot, less quickly, a lot slower. So does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I know that you're concentrating on what you're doing. So I'll just jump in and say that I'll often you have to pay attention to the fat over lean rule when you're adding something to a painting that's already dry. But I often use just linseed oil. You can put that on top of just about anything, and I'll try to use as little linseed oil as possible, and just paint on that fog and that mist, and sort of try to get it to the right degree of transparency so that I can see whatever I need to see underneath. And that usually involves just a lot of trial and error. I'll wind up making it too opaque and then wiping some off with a paper towel, and then maybe I'll need to change the color and make it a little warmer or a little cooler, So I would encourage the person who asked the question just to play and experiment. Maybe take some old paintings that are sitting in your studio. Again, I don't have any old paintings in my studio that kind of didn't work out, but I've heard that other artists do. And if you have anything sitting in your studio that you could kind of just mess around with, experiment and try to get things to be more transparent and less transparent and warmer and cooler, and just try to, get the effect that you're looking for. Barbara was asking specifically about gouache. Oh, okay. Maybe you can jump in here because I really don't do a lot of gouache painting. And when I do, it's without much method.
Yeah. So the misty is tough. I mean, you would have to do a lot of dry brushing with it, and I've done that where you basically just take a little bit of medium or no medium at all, and just kind of put a little bit of gouache and not too much, and you just drag it across the brush across the surface. With me, I'm the same way, and where if it's not anything like if I'm not really key to just want to stick with one medium, I'll just switch. So I'll usually switch over to acrylics a lot at that point if I can't get the effect that I want with gouache, and that's just the way I am. I don't mind mixing mediums at all as long as they're compatible.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let me ask you a question about what you're doing. If you were working on a much larger painting where the block-in stage might take a while, would you do this kind of in steps, or would you really cover the whole painting with liquid, even though it dries pretty quickly?
The answer is I would cover the whole area with liquid if I was doing with the gouache, knowing full well that I wouldn't necessarily reach all of the areas. The real reason, the big reason is just I need the liquid to show me what the actual glossy or version of the true value of an area is. So if I don't have that, then I'll be matching values that are much lighter than they actually are.
Right.
But that's going to happen, as you know, Gavin, too. Like with especially with oil paint, especially with darker colors, once it dries, you'll have sinking, and that will happen as you keep layering more and more as you keep layering your values, your paint on it. So I'll always start a painting process with liquid, as long as if an area is dried out for me.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody's asking if you're painting in gouache or in oils or a combo, and it is a combo. He covered the drawing in gouache, wiped some away, and is now painting in oil over top of that.
Yeah, and so what I've essentially done now is I've asked myself first and foremost, okay, what's the what's my darkest values, right? And so I have two large areas. One was the background, one was this shadow in the foreground here. And so I wanted to make sure that I put those in. And the reason why is because the shadows actually will help ground my composition for me. It'll actually contextualize my lights. And also it's a huge shape, so it has a lot of influence on how I view other values. Now,
that makes great sense. Just for your reference, we have about half an hour left, 25 minutes to half an hour.
Perfect, thank you. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and block in these shadow colors here. The big thing I'm thinking about now is, now that I know that this is shadow and this is light, then all I have to just remind myself is what temperature I'm dealing with. So what I mean by that is every light has a color temperature to it. You could kind of group them into two types, warm and cool. In this case, it's cool. So what I mean by that is you have all the colors in this area are going to be influenced by the color blue. Now, since light is the opposite of shadow, in the shadow you actually get the completely opposite temperature. So in this case, since the lights are cool, the shadows are going to be relatively warmer. And so they tend to kind of lean more towards the oranges. Now, because I had selected burnt umber, all my shadows are automatically warm. So I'm already starting with warm shadows, which is great. And so as I put my cooler colors on top, they're really going to pop because I have my shadow, my overall shadow side values are nice and warm. If this were a warm light painting, I would have done I would have covered it, the gouache. I would have used maybe like ultramarine to cover my painting up and did the.
That is very handy. Okay, that's really interesting to know.
Yeah, the less work, the better.
Right.
So now I'm just reminding myself, okay, it's a red apple. In shadow, it's going to be some sort of like warmish red. Now, there are going to be all these different types of, reflective light and color. You want to just simplify it first when you're first pass, and just think about really kind of just temperature and just making sure you got the right value. What I'll do is I like to apply my paint in what's called tiles. I actually picked it up by looking at or watching Morgan Weisling paint, and I found it really, really effective for me. My teacher, Bill Mont, called it dabs of color, but I like the idea of tiles. They're just basically shapes. So I put something down in a shape of value, and then if I want to make a transition, I'll put the value right next to it, and that allows me to just contextualize and just think as slowly and methodically as possible. And not blend either, because that'll really smear or slur my transitions rather than actually make transitions.
Yeah, I think that's a big one for a lot of people. Can you just say a little bit more about that, going out of your way not to blend, and then if there are times that you do blend?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the biggest case for blending is when you're trying to make you have a dark value and a light value and just trying to make the value in between. And the problem with that is that there's so many different factors that go into it. Sometimes you have, just with value alone, if it's a dark object and you have a really light and really dark, the in-between's not going to be the correct transition, and vice versa with the light object. And then when you throw color into it, you have what's called chroma or intensity, and that changes depending on where you're at in the form. And mixing usually kind of lowers the chroma in a lot of cases, especially when you have extremes in values. So in those cases, you don't want to blend, because that will actually sort of muddy things up value-wise and color-wise. And so that's why I put clean paint against clean paint. And eventually with oil paint, it wants to go in and out of itself, right? It's a medium that kind of promotes soft edges. So I don't really have to worry about that. Where I will blend, however, is if I have an edge that needs to be softened into a background or something like that, where I'm happy with the values, but the shape is a little bit too harsh, or the edge itself is a little bit too sharp. So in those cases, I will blend, and it's a great way of working it.
That makes a lot of sense. So my friend Rona is asking what colors you have on your palette.
It's a great question.
Hey, Rona.
I have titanium white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, a quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue. This great blue that I caught was a cobalt teal light.
That is a great color. Look at that.
Yeah, it's like Andrew Tischler, or Andrew Tischler, I think his name is, had it on his palette. And this is a Viridian. And then I have right here my earth colors. I like to keep them separate, just because it allows me to just know that when I'm dealing with earth colors, they tend to kind of kill chroma. So I want to keep them separate so that I know, I'm very aware when I'm dipping into them. I have yellow ochre and a brown madder.
Excellent. That is actually really similar to the way I lay my palette out. And I have just written down on a yellow sticky note, cobalt teal. So thank you for that one too.
Yeah. So now I'm just kind of applying my shapes of colors in my shadows. Now, what I did, I want to kind of point this out. The first color I started with was right up next to this dark. And what I'm doing is I won't start here. I'll always start right up where I have my darkest darks established, right here, my big shapes. Because I know that, if I could just relate, these two relationships are going to be a lot more accurate than something in the middle where, there's no color touching itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even from the beginning, you're comparing what you're putting down to what you already have.
Exactly. So I will dip into the medium if I find that the paint's a little stiff.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the brand, of course, but I'm not doing it for anything else other than that.
If the paint on your palette is a little stiff.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
As I'm mixing it, if I feel like a bit of a drag on the brush, I don't want it to swim on me, but I also don't want it to feel like I'm just scraping the paint on.
Right.
So now what I'm doing is just moving on to the peach here. I'm going to come back in and fill those holes in, but I will bounce around quite a bit. And the great thing is I already have this established, so I could do that for myself.
Yeah.
Now, eventually what I will do is put in this big background. I don't really need to now at first, because the value's there. So if I didn't have the value there, then that would be a whole nother kind of, problem, because I wouldn't be able to relate it properly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so I'm just keeping my strokes pretty large here, because I want to cover this area pretty quickly so we can get to the fun stuff.
Are you only using one brush for all of this?
Yeah, I got two brushes, one for my background and one for my fruit here.
Right.
But yeah, it's a number 6 filbert.
Okay.
It's a nice workhorse brush for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you can beat the stuffing out of those things and they'll still work.
Yeah. Really fell in love with them. My teacher and mentor, Craig Nelson, introduced me to them, and I never looked back.
Yeah, his work is excellent.
Yeah, he's great. He'd probably be done with like 4 paintings by the time it took me to do this one area, but Yeah, so keep those questions rolling if you have any, but otherwise, I will talk.
Oh yeah,
But
please do. Let me look through here.
yeah.
I think that I've got it all. Let's see. But it's interesting. So, do you always block in the shadows before you block in the lights?
It's a great question. I always pick I used to say before, like, yes, as a rule, yes. But it's really all about kind of working general to specific. So if it's mostly the vast majority of your piece is like in the lights and you have little bits of shadow, then, I'd want to block in the largest shape first.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And regarding your really complex pieces, your sort of big, ambitious ones, how faithful to your reference, whether you're painting from life or working from photos in the studio, are the patterns of light and shadow in your pieces? I'm sure a lot of people will be looking at your work and just be spellbound by how magnificent they are, but also by how naturally it appears. And when you have these sort of very unconventional lighting conditions, but they make perfect sense, will the scene that you're looking at are you able to arrange the lights so that they look, fairly similar, the pattern of light and shadow fairly similar to the way your painting looks, or are you sort of taking bits and pieces and making vast changes to the pattern of lights and shadows?
Yeah, it's a really great question. My answer is I try and paint the scene as how as I remember it, right? How and that what I mean by that is that I work from photography quite a bit, but photos, as you know, Gavin, they don't give you all the answers. It's never really a true, accurate representation of what it was like to be in that in that particular place, or and it's like when you're sitting friends down, you're showing them you went on this great trip, and you're showing them photographs and pointing at things, and you're saying, I know the photograph doesn't show it, but it was, you have to you have to imagine this and that, and it was so beautiful and it was so vibrant.
Yeah, anyone who's ever looked at a photo they took of a sunset they experienced will know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so oftentimes that always happens in all my references. So what I will do is I will kind of push things and emphasize things as I remember them. And I'll make mental notes. I will write things down, or if I have paints near me, I'll do a quick sketch. I mean, all of this really comes from, though, studying painting from life. I paint in my studio exclusively from photographs, sometimes multiple photographs if I'm combining things. Maybe a photo didn't have an element that I saw in the scene, so I'll take it from another photograph and I'll put it in, or move things around. Because of camera distortion, really messed up the shapes. But all that experience is really kind of leaned on, or comes from me painting actual, things like landscapes or figures, still lifes, all from life. Because from life, really teaches you how to get the essential facts and kind of break down things, distill complexity or a complex image into a manageable set of shapes that's clear and visually communicates with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, that blue really pops on there. I mean, that is just a great color.
Yeah, I like that. What I'll do is I'll go, I don't mind going pretty strong with the color, especially if I know I'm going to be painting opaque color on top of opaque color, because eventually it will kind of mellow out as I make corrections on top. And I'll do a lot of, if I'm covering an area, I'll do a lot of painting with the side of my brush. Gives it a nice soft edge.
Yeah. Now, students are always asking me about the process. And I remember when I was first trying to learn how to paint, I never stopped asking my teachers, so do you let it dry and then paint over it, or do you paint it all wet into wet? And what's this thing with layering that I keep hearing so much about? So can you talk about that? You're blocking this into a layer, we call it a couch, of liquid. Liquid is fast drying. It dries faster than regular oil paint does. So are you planning to do the whole painting sort of, I mean, I realize this is just a demo for us, but would you plan to do the whole painting sort of in one shot, or would you plan to let it dry and then go back into it? What is your thoughts here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And oh man, it's like if we don't have my teachers on here with me, because they'd be like, Ray would just bug us and bug us and bug us and bug us.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. All I would do is sit there and pester my teachers about all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, everything, every nuance of it. So that's why I can appreciate people asking questions while I paint. But my first pass is just to get my color down. And what I'll do is I will just try and paint it as best I can. And then what I'll do afterwards, I'll let it dry and I'll go back on top. And then I will just correct any areas that need to be corrected, and by either opaquely painting them or adjusting them with maybe a glaze. Most of the time, if it's usually like a shape thing, so I'll opaquely paint it, or if it needs to be resolved, the form needs to be resolved, I'll use what I have to kind of advise me on how to kind of further the form. So it's really just a very straightforward in terms of how how I build up a painting. It's just I keep it nice and simple opaque passages, with an occasional kind of adjustment with a transparent glaze.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now you have about 10 minutes left here.
Great. Yeah, I'll block this in. And so I'm just working on my lights now, and you'll notice that I'm making now my reds have a little bit more bluiness. So you're having this sort of red-violet, blue-violet, and I'm kind of plopping these areas in here. I'm not too quick to cover up my underdrawing. I mean, I drew it, right? So I drew it so that I knew exactly where to put my shapes. So I'll, when I'm confident that the shapes are in there, then I'll really kind of go over it and take it out. But if I did a careful drawing like I did here, then I like to kind of keep it around for as long as possible.
Yeah, I can see you sort of going out of your way not to be too kind of methodical about it, but to do what you can to keep that drawing. That's really interesting to see.
Yeah, and if I'm painting from life and I'm putting a very sort of cursory type of underdrawing, where I'm using my brush and kind of getting my major angles, then I'm a lot more apt to kind of cover it up, because I'm there's still, even though I'm applying color at that stage when I'm painting from life, my first layer is just as much about drawing as it is about value. So, or shape as it is about value. And but in this case, since I know exactly, my underdrawing represents exactly where I want my shapes, then I like to kind of keep it around as long as I can.
Yeah, it's frustrating when, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but if I knock myself out to do, a pretty accurate underdrawing, especially if I'm doing architecture or something that I find very complicated, and then in the first 5 minutes I cover the entire thing and can't see it anymore. Sometimes I ask myself what I'm doing with my life at moments like that.
Oh, so it's good that you have it sometimes. Mine's it's like a daily occurrence. It's like, what am I doing? All right, so I've moved down into like a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to start to pick up the paint quite a bit more. At this point, my palette's pretty saturated with a bunch of mixtures all over the place. So I'm going to clear it out really quickly. How am I doing on time, Gavin?
You've got 5 or 10 minutes left.
Great. Okay. So I'll just scrape a couple of these piles together. Just kind of organize.
That's neat how that already reads as the reflection of the pear in the apple there on the right side of it.
Yeah, and it just took like just a small tile, which was really nice. But it was really just matching, the value looked good. So I was just matching the lightness and darkness of it.
Yeah, our brain just does the math for us. It's really neat.
Isn't it cool? And then, eventually, you'll cover the area, but there's still going to be some of that underpainting showing. And, it provides a lot of really nice, like, color charm to it where things are optically mixing.
Yeah, and it sort of ties the entire scene together because you've left bits and pieces of it showing through just about everywhere. Foreground, background, objects.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could design for that, but I usually don't kill myself. In my case, where if it's in terms of like designing exactly where I want the underpainting to show, but I mean, people have done that to really great success. It'll just happen naturally for me. I just will move on from an area if I feel that I need to move on from it. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back in and just kind of saying, okay, well, I got these values down. Is there anything else I need to do? Like, and I'm asking myself this question, if, what I'll always do is I'll try and paint the best that I can in a given area or in a given pass. And then I'll say to myself, once it's ready to go back in, I'll say, okay, you have now, if you can go back in time and just give yourself a second opportunity, what would you do differently? And that's how I approach my second stage, where I have information down and I can go back in and I have something to compare to. So I used to really just beat myself up if I didn't get something up accurate the first time around. But I remember Bill Mon used to say, he used to tell me, don't worry about it. It's like, dude, how can you make an accurate assessment if there's something you don't have anything to compare to? Because really it's not about the value, it's about the values next to it, or the color. It's all about the surrounding area. So you have to be able to compare with good information. And if you don't have any information, then it's hard to compare. And if it's hard to compare, then it's hard to do anything accurately.
I think it's so helpful for all of us to remember that we're allowed to kind of procrastinate. We're allowed to go, oh, you know what? I didn't catch it. I'll just deal with it later. And that there's no shame in that whatsoever.
Yeah, everyone's a human being, I love reading. My favorite parts of reading about artists is seeing, just reading about how, and this is more really self-serving for me. It's like when they were really frustrated and like, how somebody like Sargent would just apologize profusely for messing a hand up. And,
those are some of my favorite episodes where, some duchess will have written a letter to her friend, say that she posed for him for 3 or 4 hours, and he was just sitting there muttering to himself angrily the entire time, and then he scraped it off at the end and said, okay, you're going to have to come back tomorrow and we'll try again. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've reflected on that while some disaster is going on in my studio and said, okay, it's all right. It happened to him. It's happening to me. Right.
Yeah. It's just like, oh man. It's easy to see the end product of things and just think that it had just appeared, but
right.
I wish it were the case.
Right. I just today read an episode of 𝗕liche, if you know him, who's one of my favorites, and just how disgruntled he was during the entire process of doing a certain painting, and how angry and frustrated and disconsolate and he was, and he just worked through it and he got there in the end.
Oh man, that's great to hear. I didn't know that about Reppin.
I didn't either. I thought everything he touched turned to gold, but it's nice to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay to be disgruntled at your piece. Just be kind to yourself, folks. All right, so I'm just clarifying a lot of my edges here.
So at this point, we've got about 5 minutes max.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So really, you've essentially seen the process. It's just mostly a rinse and repeat. I'm going to go back to my large areas and say, okay, what do I need? and then go back to the smaller and smaller areas. I'll be more apt to jump around, but it's pretty much how I view it. Now, I'm going to go into just a couple of more touches of color. And you could see there's some unblended areas, but basically how I make them feel, kind of create the transitions, I just keep putting more and more tiles on top.
It really works already. I mean, you could sign this thing as it is.
Oh, great. All right. I'll send it to you in the mail.
That would be great.
You could just Venmo me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure the charge will go through, so that's no sweat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that's an interesting point you make about when you need transitions rather than blending. You find the color and the value that ought to be there and you put it down. I think that when I learned that was a really big one for me. That was a great leap forward when I sort of figured that one out.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to just, it's not natural to do, I think, and you have
Right.
to really force yourself. And so if you're struggling with that, that's totally fine. It's really about training your mind to just sit back and just make a decision, make a clear decision. If you don't have an idea of what it is that you're putting down or why you're putting something down, then just stop and just take a second for yourself and just reassess.
It's a great point. Carl is asking, do you want just a touch of highlight or none whatsoever? It looks like you're blocking in the middle tones and you haven't gotten to the highlights yet. Can you talk about that for 2 seconds?
Yeah, I think the highlights, you really need to kind of build up to them. They look as light as they do because of the stuff underneath it. I'll put something down, like I've just put something down with a palette knife. Why a palette knife? I just wanted to create something that had like a little bit more of a clearer shape. I could do it with a brush too. It's not a big deal. I like using a palette knife. I just wanted to show kind of like how I tile with that. But then what I'll do is I'll work around it and refine it and do what I need to do on it. So yeah, highlights are great. I'll paint them in all the time. But you need to set up the highlight. You can't start with it because then it won't look as bright as it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
All right, so I'm just going in and tiling this away. I've kind of placed my, I'm not really dipping into my liquid at all. At this point, I'm just kind of, the paint's at a nice consistency that I like. It's stiff, but not, I guess it's opaque, but it's not like you're just caking it on. I got a really light touch on this. Not really pushing into the paint. I'm just laying a stroke right on top.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're having any trouble controlling any second layer that you're putting on top of the first one.
Yeah, that was a big problem for me early on in school because just the amount of paint to put on the brush. What does that feel like? And kind of what are your aims and your process? I meant, what do you want to do to the painting? Do you want to revisit it a couple of times? It's just as one and done. And so all these questions that you don't really think that you have to answer, you really kind of make painting hard at first. But you gain a lot of insight just through good information, but also just practice. Really working with the paint.
Yeah, okay, so we'll probably have to call it right about now, Ray. Are you ready here?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Great.
Yeah, so I hope that was helpful.
It looks fantastic. I mean, that, like I said, you could sign it as is. That looks great. So listen, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed Ray's demo. I know I did. I learned a lot. Don't forget to visit his website, which is RaymondBonilla.com. And follow him on Instagram at @RayBonillaPainter. I think we've got it down on the screen. And I have a gift for you. You can download the free ebook, 97 Incredible Art Secrets. Go to 97artsecrets.com/ASL. If you haven't signed up for Plein Air Live, it's time to do so. So November 6th through 8th, 2025, with Essential Techniques Day on November 5th. 3 days to fast track your journey to outdoor painting. So sign up at pleinairlive.com. And if you want to treat yourself with a week of painting amongst friends in a warm location in the middle of the winter, sign up for Winter Art Escape. I'll tell you what, let's watch this short video.
Every February, it happens. Gray skies, the freezing winds, blowing snow, the endless shoveling, power outages, and closed airports. Winter doesn't just chill your bones, it drains your inspiration. But what if instead of scraping ice, you were setting up your easel under the warm sun? What if instead of gray, you were surrounded by color? This February, join us for Eric Rhodes' second Winter Art Escapes Artist Retreat for a week of painting in the sunshine of Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia. Paint the breathtaking coastal marshes, the roaring ocean, historic Victorian homes and town squares, trees dripping with Spanish moss and golden sunsets. With every detail handled, your room, your meals, your painting agenda, all you have to do is show up, paint, and connect. You deserve a solid week of painting and making friends. Spots are limited to just 100 artists. They're filling fast. Don't spend another February stuck indoors. Escape winter. Recharge. Paint with us at Winter Art Escape.
Well, that looks awesome. I love that part of the country. That looks like a lot of fun. I might even join up. So check out my website, everybody. It's GavinGlakas.com. You can find me on Instagram at Gavin_Glakas. And you can check out my videos, Glow, Creating Depth, Atmosphere, and Vibrant Sun, and Painting the Night at PaintTube TV. So a huge thank you to Raymond Bonilla. He just did a great demo today, and I hope you all learned a lot. And I hope you'll join me tomorrow. We've got another good friend of mine, Stephen Walker, coming on. He's going to do a demo. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.